Peace, peace, peace. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know, it's your boy Vic Slain Hope. And I got another video for y'all. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about how slavery was not about race. Now, before you click off the video because you're triggered, I would encourage you to watch the whole video because I'm going to go through a whole timeline and break this whole thing down. And like I usually tell y'all can look this information up for yourself after I'm done talking about it. And, you know, we can also have a dialogue in the comment section. So before I start, I wanted to say this, right? Slavery was a thing that was practiced all throughout the world. It's not peculiar to America. It might have been a little more insidious, a little more brutal, a little way more different in America, but it's something that was practiced all throughout the world, right? It was the what's the word I'm looking for? The practice of invading other countries and taking their women and children as slaves after you conquer them is something that has been done for a long time. It's not peculiar to America. But I just wanted to say that. Now, I'm going to get into the information. So, going into the timeline. What happened in 1452, right? In 1452, the Pope issued what is called the Dum Diversas, right? So, the Dum Diversas, it was a few things happening in 1452. And one of the things that was happening in 1452 is it was a war going on between the Christians and the Muslims. And I'm just going through the history and I'm going to tie it back to slavery, right? There's a lot of stuff that was going on around the time. In 1452, the Muslims conquered Constantinople, it was one of the Roman capitals, Roman Catholics, Roman Empire's capital, which is modern day Istanbul in Turkey, right? So there was this big war going on, this religious war, right? That was going on throughout large parts of the world, right? Europe, Asia, some parts of Africa. It was a lot of stuff going on. So the Pope in 1452, he issued what is called the Dum Diversas. The Dum Diversas is basically a papal bull. It was a decree. And the decree stated that all Christians had the right to persecute non-Christians and to commit them to perpetual servitude. So he said this around 1452. Portugal was the first, and you know, like Europe was under kind of like the jurisdiction of the Catholic Church, right? The Pope. So the Pope was like the supreme leader. So when the Pope issued this, a lot of countries in Europe started to leave and to go and you know, on the conquest of Christianity. But not just Christianity. Europe was also going through things of they don't grow natural resources, right? They was having issues, and that time in the world it was about trade. Everything was about trade. So if you don't have certain things to trade to be able to get food, to be able to get other things to survive, you in trouble. So Europe was in trouble. This is around the time of the Dark Ages, right? The medieval ages. So it was a lot of, you know, bad stuff going on in Europe. Notice everywhere they went places that have resources, right? Because they were trying to ensure their survival. So whether it was food, cotton, tea, sugar, this is the places that these people went to because they didn't have a lot of these things back home. So they went in the name of trying to increase their survival and also in the name of Christianity. This is why when they came across with the natives, right? And even in history books, it says things about manifest destiny, right? They teach us this in school. That it talks about that it was their God-given right to inherit this land, meaning America, right? So this was the basis for like why they did what they did. It was not really necessarily about race. So the first country to leave was Portugal, which is not a coincidence why Brazil was one of the biggest slave colonies in the Americas, right? Brazil was the biggest slave colony over here. And they was colonized by the Portuguese, right? So the Portuguese was the first to leave Europe. Remember, Columbus also, so what happened next? In 1492, Columbus came to the Spaniards, right? To get these ships to go on his voyage. And he found a new world. Again, these people are on a conquest for survival, not just persecution of non-Christians and to commit them to perpetual servitude, but they also was losing land to the Muslims, right? Because Christians used to rule parts of like Syria. They had a lot of lands in Iraq and all those different places, right? But they lost a lot of those lands to Muslims. So now they're looking for new lands and they're looking for new people to conquer, but they also looking for provision because they're dying off in Europe. So Columbus goes out in 1492. What also happens in 1492? The Muslims got expelled from Spain, right? In 1492. And I'm gonna make a story later on about how that happened. So the Muslims got kicked out of Spain and the Jews, right? Columbus has out. He finds the New World. So when they found the New World, they found this land, right? Now you need workers to cultivate this land. You need people to work. So this is where the creation of capitalism comes in, right? And what is capitalism? Capitalism is economic system. Is an economic system, right, based on trade, industry, controlled privately for profit. Excuse me. Controlled privately for profit, right? So, like I mentioned, Europe did not grow a lot of natural resources. So when it comes time for them to trade things, because this is what people were doing, there wasn't really a lot of currencies, right? There was gold and silver and stuff like that, but they didn't really have a lot of natural resources to be able to trade. So when they wanted to get spices maybe from India, or when they wanted to get some slaves, right, to purchase some slaves, or when they wanted to, just get certain things, they couldn't really do it because they didn't really have a lot of natural resources or things to really trade with. So they created this value system, right, which later on became capitalism. Now, I don't know at what specific year this became a thing, but this became a thing that they used to manipulate. For example, when I don't have a lot of natural resources, I'm going to make you believe that this pen is worth more than one bag of rice, for example. So if when they used to be like, fair exchange and equal trade for things, excuse me, they started adding a value. So no, my pen is worth 5 of those bags of rice, right? They started doing things like this, creating a system of value because they didn't really have shit to really trade with. So with that being said, is they started telling, the people they started coming to, they started saying, well, my stuff is this is worth more than that, so you got to give me more. So this was the game they started playing, right? Again, this is an economic value system, and this is the birth of capitalism, right? So they started doing this to purchase slaves. They started doing this, and the reason why they went to Africa to purchase slaves is because, one, they believe Africa was the continent of, they believe, they used to say things like Africans were savages and they was uncivil and they was this and they was that. They also believe it was a pagan continent, right? It was a continent that didn't really believe in monotheism, right? So again, the Pope said you have the right as Christians to commit non-Christians to perpetual servitude. So they didn't see nothing wrong with trying to go there and get these people and enslave them, right? Because again, to them, they're not Christian, right? Another thing, 20% of the people that were enslaved and came to the Americas were Muslim. And this is the people that they was already beefing with. So they really don't care, right? That's another thing. So they started off trading and purchasing slaves, and then eventually they started just taking them because they knew they had more guns. They knew they had the weaponry to kind of like take from these African monarchs or the people who were in power, because they didn't really have the guns, the amount of guns that they had, right? So when it's, again, because they didn't really have a lot of shit to trade with, eventually you start to be like, you know what, I'm just gonna go over there and take. So it was a business deal going wrong, right? So this stuff goes wrong. Again, race is not even really a thing yet. They get to America. In America, in 1682 to be exact, they created the concept of race. This is when a lot of these fake scientists started to come up. They started doing testing on women. They started doing a whole bunch of things, right? They started coming up with these ideologies that Africans were inferior. This is the creation of race. They predominantly created, excuse me. So Thomas Jefferson said in his book, The Notes on the State of Virginia, and I encourage y'all to go get it. In the Notes of the State of Virginia, Thomas Jefferson said that when they asked him about the New World and what was going on and how was everything, he basically said this when he described the people. He said, as for the Indians, talking about the natives, he said, as for the Indians, they are just like us, meaning the European man. He said they are just like us. The only issue is that they've been living in the wild for too long. So we just going to have to domesticate them and get them up to speed, basically, so they could be just like us. He said, as far as the African, he said that the African was in a place between a human and an animal. So Perhaps this is where later on the concept came of 3/5 of a human being came from, because they didn't consider us really human, right? They said we was between a place of a human and an animal. Another thing that Thomas Jefferson also said was that if they were to make the white man, right, once race was created, if they was to make the European white man do the work that they were making the African man do, he said that the European man would not last half of a day. So he basically was saying that the African man was the more durable slave and more built for the conditions and for the things that they was making them do. So this is something that Thomas Jefferson said. It's in his book, in the notes of the state of Virginia. You can go get it. So this is when race really became a thing, when they started to describe and put people into boxes, right? So the reasons why race was created in America, right? It was one, to identify people or to put them in a box or to differentiate people, you know, from different people. That was one. But the main reason, it was because poor whites lived in the same conditions as enslaved people, right? They lived in shacks. They also was working for the master, but they was getting some type of payment, unlike the Africans, right? So they lived in the same conditions. They kind of like wore the similar clothes. They kind of like ate the same type of food, and they both worked for the 1%, which is the capitalists, right? They worked for the 1%. And again, economic system based on trade, industry, controlled privately for profit. These slaves were privately controlled. These slaves were privately owned by families. Again, all right. So capitalism is the real issue here. It's not racism. Racism became a byproduct of capitalism, right? Of profit. Racism became a byproduct to get us to fight and keep arguing about race when the real problem is the 1%. This is why they killed Fred Hampton. But anyway, what I was trying to say is they created racism to not get the poor whites and the Africans to come together to overthrow the 1%. So they created race, right? Gave a little bit of power to the whites, right? They was able to become overseers and beat the slaves and do certain things. So this is what they did. They created this division and this separation so that they wouldn't be joining forces together to overthrow the 1%, right? It's kind of like the same thing they do today. Today we are bickering, we're fighting, we're arguing about race when the real issue is the 1%, the capitalist who controls everything, right? Who privately makes money of the hospitals. They make money of transportation. They make money of everything that the society needs. That doesn't even make sense. All of that stuff should be state owned. There's no reason why somebody should be getting their pockets fat, you know, by the stuff that everybody in society needs. So for example, when COVID happened and we needed masks, right? That was owned by a private company. Like, how is it that something that belongs in a hospital, how is it that gloves, how is it that all of these things are privately owned? That doesn't make sense. For example, our government does not produce weapons. They do not produce weapons, right? What they do is they tax the people, and with that tax money, they buy war planes, they buy bombs, they buy guns, they buy all of these things from private companies. This is why it's so hard to have these gun laws, right, changed, because the companies are privately owned, and these companies control the politicians. This is why nothing changes. The companies control the politicians through lobbying. Yo, it gets deep, y'all. But I don't want to go too deep into the video because I could go into a whole bunch of stuff. But that's the whole point of the video. The whole point of this video, racism is a byproduct of capitalism. And racism just keeps us distracted long enough, fighting and bickering, and we thinking that's the real issue, when the real issue is the system, the economic system that is about profit. That's the real problem, which is why we can't get no solutions, which is why they killed Fred Hampton, because Fred Hampton, they knew what was going on. He was so when he was preaching to the people, when he was talking about the Rainbow Coalition, when he was talking about, no, we need to get all poor people, because most of the people in the world are poor. So when he said we need to get most of the poor people and the working class on one hand, right, to combat the 1% of people that are oppressing us, and then a lot of things would change. So you know what happened? They killed him at 21 years old. They killed Fred Hampton because people were starting to wake up. People were starting to realize the problem is not racism, it's capitalism. And this is the same reason why racism was created in 1682, to keep the poor whites and the enslaved people from joining forces together and overthrowing or killing, perhaps, the 1%, which is the same reason they killed Fred Hampton when he was building his Rainbow Coalition. But let me know what y'all think in the comment section. I really want y'all to, hopefully y'all watch the whole video. If y'all like it, make sure y'all share it. Make sure, you know, you like it. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section. Y'all stay blessed out there. Peace.